Thank you, Professor Sharp, for agreeing to sit down with us and give this interview. We appreciate it. Can you give us a quick timeline of how you got to where you are today?
Where am I now? I've been at Ivey for over 22 years. I grew up in England, went to conventional grammar school in the UK, and then did an undergraduate degree in engineering, science and economics at Oxford. I was fortunate to get in there. I did a master's degree in management at the University of Manchester, and between those I was an engineering apprentice, as a lot of people do in England in those days. So I worked before I went to Oxford, and I worked again afterwards, and then I worked while I was in between times in my MSc. And then I was working in industry for 3 years after that, and got the opportunity to travel to a place which nobody had ever heard of in those days, called Bahrain. It's a little island in the Middle East, in the Arabian Gulf. And I went there originally for a holiday, and got hired by the head of the business studies department at the new college they had there, and finished up spending 5 years. That's where I started teaching, where I learned how to teach. Teaching business studies, mostly accounting and statistics. And in fact I enjoyed it so much that I thought I ought to take this seriously, and that meant I needed to do a PhD. So I applied from the Middle East to a number of universities in the United States, because in those days that was the place to go for studying business. And I was lucky to be admitted to MIT in Boston, and I did my PhD there. I finished up at MIT, and I did a PhD in international business with a minor in finance. I then went to Boston College. I taught there for 7 years. It's a wonderful institution, and my wife and I, with our kids, moved here in 1992, and I've been here more or less ever since. I've spent 22 years here now, and a couple more to go.
So can you give us your thoughts about what you think for the case method of learning? Do you have any interesting stories that you can share regarding this?
The case method, of course, is what Ivey is best known for. And yes, I'm a passionate believer in the case method. What we say is that it's not always a very efficient way of learning, but it's a very effective way of learning. Meaning that you learn once and then you learn forever. I mean, I could lecture for an hour, and I'd cover every point that I'd need to know, you'd need to know, and you'd copy it down if you didn't fall asleep, and then you'd have to learn it, and then as soon as you take the exam you'd forget it, and that would be the end of it. Whereas with the case method you learn something and you really integrate it. And I remember so I'm a passionate believer in the case method. To be quite honest, as a student, I did not enjoy the case method. It's stressful, it puts you on the spot, and I didn't find that comfortable. But that's fine. I mean, that's what the case method is all about. It's very much about putting you in the position of a decision maker, and having to deal with all that ambiguity. That's what makes you a good manager. On one occasion, one particular case, I looked through this and I said, yes, I know exactly what's going on here. You have to understand, I had a background in accounting. I was a qualified accountant by that time. So I saw through the numbers, I ran the numbers, and I did the analysis. I said, okay, I know exactly what's going on here. That man's an idiot. He should be fired. and so I came to class, and in due course I made my point, and everybody listened politely. And then somebody at the back says, but what about that? And I thought, oh. No, the man's an idiot. Yeah. But wait a minute, doesn't this mean... I thought, yeah, you're right. Yeah. And I realised I was wrong. And I'd come to class knowing and thinking I knew what was going on, and my picture was part of it. Now, why does that mean that the case method is effective? Well, for me, I'm telling a story that this took place in 1981, that's 30 odd years ago. And I still remember it like it was yesterday. Right? So if you contribute in class, you'll remember. That's why we ask people to contribute in class.
Can you talk a little bit more about your research? why are you interested in business ethics? What fueled that interest for you? And can you speak about a little bit about what you're currently working on?
I think if you're an accounting professor, you have to be aware that integrity and ethics is at the heart of the audit profession. It's very, very important for the practice of accounting. So it's important that we understand how ethics works and what behaviour should be and how to enforce that and ensure that it works the right way. What I've been doing lately is working with a couple of colleagues in Germany on trying to understand the relationship between the way we provide performance information, that is, we tell you how well you have done in something, in a task or whatever it might be, and the likelihood that this will cause people to cheat. And whether or not, for example, working in teams can cause people to cheat. It actually does, because people will justify that, I'm not doing it for me, it's not a self-interested thing, I'm doing it for the team. And so, I can cheat a little bit and it will be, and I'm helping my team. So it's an interesting laboratory experiment where we actually get students like yourselves to actually take part in a study, and one of the things that we were watching was how long they exceeded the allowed time. And everybody who's in my game knows that when you have a 4-hour exam or a 2-hour exam, everybody likes to take an extra minute or two, even though they're not supposed to. And if you let them take a couple of more minutes, well, they will do so. So we allowed the participants in the study to take more time, but we told them quite clearly that they shouldn't do so. And we saw how differently, how more inclined or less inclined they were to take more time based on how we were rewarding them.
Do you have an interesting interview story yourself that you'd like to share?
Yeah, there's one interesting. So I haven't interviewed many times. I've been here 22 years, so it's 22 years ago since I last interviewed for a job. 23 years ago, in fact. So, but I remember when I was applying for my undergraduate place at Oxford, we were actually invited down to college for a day of interviews and tests and things like that. And I was sitting in a room in an armchair with a couple of the professors there, and there was this round coffee table sitting in the middle there between us. And one of the professors says, "Now, we're going to play this game, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to take it in turns to put pennies on the table. And you can start, and then I'll put a penny on, and then you'll put a penny on, and the first person who doesn't have room to put a penny on loses." Right? And I thought, funny sort of game. And I said, and they said, "You start." And I thought, well, I'm looking at this round table, and I thought, I have no idea what to do. But is there one place on that table that might give me an advantage? I don't know what it is, but is there one place on that table that's different from everywhere else on the table? I thought, well, yeah, there is, the middle. So I said, okay, I'll put mine in the middle. I had no idea why, but I did. And he says, okay, now I'm going to put, the professor said, I'm going to put my penny here. Did. Now wait. And then the penny dropped, pardon the pun. Because then I realised, as long as he puts one down and I put mine opposite, there would always be space for me. Because he's put, right? And so, but I didn't know how to do it, but it kind of evolved as the game went on. That's again another one of those things that you remember for the rest of your life.